Hello, I'm Jacob Jonesworth, and welcome to the War Room. Here to talk to us about aircraft carriers today is our resident Rainbow Warrior, William Flutsworth.
Hello, William.
Thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Pleasure.
So today we're running a segment on technological developments through the 20th century, and you're here to talk to us about aircraft carriers.
Yes, aircraft carriers. So today they're a staple of pretty much every single major country in the world that has access to a sea or an ocean. Now, they didn't really start off that well. In the early days of World War I, planes were mainly launched from ground bases and weren't really considered a threat to any naval craft. However, about midway through the war, the U.S. developed this one system where an airplane could be launched from the deck of a battleship or a cruiser. Now, while quite simple and basic, it did work, and it proved that airplanes could be a threat to, sea-borne craft. So basically what the U.S. did after the war, along with Japan and Britain, and quite a lot of advancement, they actually started developing these flat-top ships, which actually gave the name aircraft carriers. Now, this was between the 20s and 30s, where mainly Japan and Britain made these large advancements. They moved the bridge of the main structure of the ship from the middle to about the side to give more room for the aircraft to land and be able to take off. Because when aircraft carriers first started out, when they were still just being launched from battleships or cruisers, they didn't have any way to get back onto the ship. So that was a big problem that they fixed with the flat-top carrier. Now, going into the Second World War, they would play a major part in the Pacific. With the Battle of Pearl Harbor, the main thing the Japanese did wrong is they didn't hit a single U.S. aircraft carrier. And that allowed us to come back in the Battle of Midway and take out 4 Japanese aircraft carriers.
Sorry, continue.
That pretty much took them out of the war. And from there on, we always had the upper hand. And even in conflicts after World War II, in Korea and Vietnam, they played a key part as it allowed the U.S. to launch airstrikes from off the peninsula and have a safe and strategic headquarters to launch attacks from. And even to this day, like I said, countries with aircraft carriers are considered the most powerful in the whole world, and it allows a Navy to have a strong presence throughout the world and allow the Army to have a strong strike force that can go anywhere it wants in the world.
Thrilling. Truly a great commentary here by Will. And a few questions, follow-up questions. What time period, I don't know if you covered this already, what time period did the aircraft carrier really rise to prominence?
Well, like I said, between the 20s and mid-30s, Japan and Britain really started making what we consider a modern aircraft carrier with a flat top, where planes could land and take off from them.
Great.
That was the main time period. And
continue, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay. So for this segment, we talk about impact ratings.
Yes.
And how impact rating at the time and then the impact rating still today.
Right.
Could you give us maybe a figure on a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 5 scale?
Well, I would say when they first started out at the end of the First World War and into the mid-20s, mid-30s, they were around a 3 out of 5 because they were a new technology. They're still being harnessed, and as the decade progressed into the 40s, into the 50s and 60s, they pretty much wiped out battleships. I've got to mention that. Battleships before World War I were the most prominent thing in a Navy.
Correct. Yes.
But after that conflict, after World War II, battleships pretty much wiped them off the map. And even today, they're still the most powerful force in the Navy. So I would give them a 5 in modern day setting.
Modern day setting, all right. A 5 out of 10 or a
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. Wow.
A big rating.
Strong. Right off the bat, hitting them with a 5 out of 5. Well, thank you, Will. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the Hawaii weather.
I will.
And we'll be right back. We're going to flip the commercial, but we will be right back. Welcome back to the War Room. I'm Jake Jonesworth, here to talk to Paulbert Frankenleaf about Recon, but I do not know where he is. He should be right. Oh my God! Welcome back to the War Room on CNN. I'm Jacob Jonesworth, here to talk to Paulbert Frankenleaf about Recon, which he so generously demonstrated a few seconds ago. So, Paulbert, please discuss with us. You're obviously a Recon expert. Please go into detail about the importance of Recon in World War II.
Well, before World War II, actually, Recon was used in World War I. All right.
Really?
But it wasn't too good,
Wasn't
I'd
too
say.
good?
But it was still good. It's good recon. I like recon.
Oh,
But
who doesn't?
they start out with, planes and balloons.
Planes and balloons.
So they just get the balloons, kind of like a hot air balloon, string it up on a string, real
Naturally.
high up, and they just take pictures of trenches or like enemy encampments.
Okay.
And they did the same with planes, but it wasn't too good.
Wasn't too good.
It started to take off though in World War II.
World War II. Okay.
All right, so now in World War II, all right, the British and the United States, that's where it was at.
So where was that?
They did trial and error. I'll give them that. And they just kind of were going with the flow of technological advancements, seeing how it was doing. And so probably between like 39 and 45, time of recon. They were just getting it down, making their planes. Cameras were better. Everything was just better with recon. They even sometimes use like people to scout out areas,
Okay.
sneak around. And Germans, you didn't see that much. They're kind of just going with the flow.
Really?
I guess because the way Blitzkrieg was, they're just kind of rushing in,
That makes sense. Yeah.
so they didn't really care about what the area was like.
That.
And Soviets, nothing really from them. They just did the visual. If you see something, go tell an officer. That's pretty much how it was.
Interesting. So, again, we discussed throughout the segment about impact rankings at the time and present day. Now, I think we've been using the 1 to 5 scale. So, if you could rank the impact of these things on a scale of 1 to 5 when it first started, I guess we could say first started in World War II compared to present day, what that's like.
Well, World War II, I'm saying it's like 4, but
Okay.
modern, it's way up there. You just think of this. You got satellites taking pictures of everything.
Right.
Planes flying around with high definition cameras. And the
Correct.
planes aren't even used by people.
They're
It's
drones.
it's just people in like other buildings, not even in the plane, flying around looking at everything. Just think of that. It's so good. And the cameras are so amazing that they will take a picture of a truck. The person will be like, oh, that's a Toyota. I know what truck that is. It's been there for 4 days. I can tell by the tire tread marks on the ground. That's how high def the cameras are. And also, those planes can hear phone calls. This is how intense and amazing Reconnaissance is. It's more than a 5 out of 5. It's at least a 6 out of 6. Alright? It's just amazing. I'm bewildered on how amazing
Bewildered.
Reconnaissance has become.
Well, that is truly incredible. Thank you for your pure enthusiasm on Recon, and we look forward to having you back on the show. Thank you, Paulbert. Okay. Thank you, Paulbert. All right, have a nice day. Welcome back to the War Room. I'm Jake Jonesworth, here to talk about helicopters with helicopter enthusiast Robert Allen Fett. Thank you for joining us today, Robert.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. All right, now you're here to discuss helicopters, and helicopters in particularly during the Vietnam War, correct?
That is true, yes.
Wonderful. So would you like to go right into that?
I would, yes.
All right, well, by all means.
So, helicopters, they got their start as a concept in World War II, in the late parts, and in Korea. Now, at first they started out as more of a evac like situation where they come in and pick up wounded soldiers and take them off the front. However, in Vietnam is where the helicopter really came into its own. Because of the thick jungles, the lack of airfields, and just the amount and just the space that they take up with the vertical takeoff and landing, they were optimal for the jungle warfare. So what happened was the U.S. brought the famous Huey in for dropping off soldiers, picking them up, that kind of stuff at first, which worked great. They used it for troop transport and medevac, and that was great. They were satisfied with it. However, as the war progressed on, they thought, why not put some machine guns and some rockets on these? And they did. And it worked quite amazingly. The results were staggering how effective it was and how much fear it struck into the Viet Cong. And as a result of this, they started making attack helicopters, which are basically even more agile and even more deadly helicopters to ground forces. Now, this was armed originally with a Gatling gun, a few missiles. They could possibly attach some smart bombs to it, just to make it even more effective against the ground warfare. Now, as the war progressed on, the helicopter was used more and more, and it showed how capable it was, and it was truly a staple of Vietnam. Now, moving into the future, into Operation Storm and even the modern day wars in the Middle East, there's still just absolute staple of these wars, just because how versatile they are and how important they are for troop transport, ground support, ground attack, medevac. There's so many possibilities that helicopters can do that airplanes can't because of the vertical takeoff and landing capabilities and the ability to hover. So I would say, back when they were first invented in the later parts of World War II, and when they were first used in Korea, they were definitely useful, but they didn't really, again, they just didn't know what could be done with them.
Naturally, yes.
And then as time progressed on, we went into Vietnam and later wars, they showed their true potential as a truly devastating machine of war.
Now, in your professional opinion, would you consider the helicopter a necessity to present-day war?
I would, because it gives an army a capability of, coming in fast and hitting hard without needing to have a pre-existing airfield or landing area. They can just come in, land, drop off troops, leave, and pick up more to come back. Or if they're an attack helicopter, they can hover around an area for hours on end and just pummel the enemy. Whereas an attack plane, they would need to circle around and they can only do so much at one time. So I definitely think that, helicopters play a major part in any war that's fought today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Fett. Thank you for joining us, and
No
we'll
problem.
be right back with some more technological developments in 20th century warfare. Welcome back to the War Room on Charter News Network. I am Jacob Jonesworth, here with Sir Patrick Magnus to discuss automatic weapons. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Magnus.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, now you're going to start out talking about World War I machine guns, right? Or are we going to have to throw it back a little bit?
Might throw it back just a teeny bit.
By all means, throw it back
So,
for us, Mr. Magnus.
starting with the Gatling gun. Usually 2-man operated.
Okay.
One man would be firing and aiming, while the other man was cranking
Cranking,
like a lever or a handle or something
Naturally.
to spin the barrels. So it was usually made up of 6 barrels. So they would fire through each barrel, helping with heating of the barrels, and it would just be used to help, protect themselves and take out enemy forces charging towards them. And it was astronomical the way it happened.
Astronomical.
Yeah, it was a huge advancement for weaponry, because think of this: other men are usually using lever action rifles at this time, and you see just 2 guys spinning barrels around, firing a gun, and it's just bullets flying everywhere.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
And then World War I comes rolling around.
Yeah, fast forward to
and
World War
you got the Maxim machine gun,
I. Maximum.
water-cooled barrel. So that meant you'd have to have another man, but it still helped with the barrel overheating.
Now, could you explain to me how the water-cooled barrel really helped with keep the machine gun working?
So, one man would be pumping water through the barrel of the gun,
Okay.
which would help keep the barrel from getting too hot and bending, because friction of the gun's going to heat up
Right.
the barrel.
Friction creates
And
heat. Yeah.
When the barrel bends, it's going to be bending down usually,
And
which would make it so that your bullets have more of a drop, which is
Okay.
not good,
It's
because
not
that
good,
just means
no.
you have to keep pulling the gun up.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to do that. So the
Yeah.
water would help with it, and sometimes if you ran out of water, you'd have to use other means, but
Other means.
not too
Hey,
costly.
whatever get the job done, right? Is that how it
Mhm.
goes? Do what you need to. Okay, so fast forward to World War II and present day. Are we still seeing advancements in the automatic weapon?
It hasn't been as big an advancement, but it's been an advancement.
Okay.
So, for example, in World War II, the Nazis used the MG42, where you could just remove the barrel and switch in a new barrel.
Oh wow.
So say one barrel got too hot, take it out, put it down in like a cool shaded area, for example. Let that one cool down while you're running your other barrel, and then you just keep switching out barrels. And the United States was using the BAR at that time, which they noticed wasn't going to be working as well. So they switched it out for the M60 in Vietnam.
M60. Okay.
And the M60 was mounted to helicopters because it had a
Gotcha.
fast fire rate, so they just used the fire from helicopters. And they noticed, though, let's make something better and go back to our roots. Gatling gun? Well, we'll make the barrels rotate electronically.
Oh.
So electricity would help rotate the barrel of the M61 Vulcan. And this was also dubbed the minigun.
Minigun. We've
Mhm.
all heard of the minigun before. Now, before you go, Mr. Magnus, one more question for you. We talked about the impact that it has that all of these technological advancements and developments have had on wars in general, what would you say would be the original impact and then the impact long term?
So originally, let's say World War One,
Mhm.
it was clearly a 5 out of 5 because
5 out of 5.
you could take on like a 100-man army, for example, with just a crew of 3 men. So that's crazy to think.
That is. That's mind blowing.
3 versus 100, and the 3 would win.
Mhm.
And then nowadays, between a 4 and 5, because they're still heavily used, obviously.
Correct.
Because if you count all types of machine guns, that means rifles too. And that, at 4 or 5, I mean, you can't really
4 or 5,
fight a
yeah.
battle without a weapon. So, it's
Would
pretty
you
heavily
say it's an
used.
essential in modern warfare?
It has to be used in modern warfare. Without
Has to be used in modern
without a weapon, you can't really fight.
All right. Well, Sir Magnus, thank you again for everything for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And when we come back, we have 2016 presidential candidate Ben Carson joining us on the phone. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to War Room. I am Jacob Jonesworth. And if you're a regular of our segment, you know that we like to end every episode with some time spent in the pillow fort. So we have a very special treat today. Calling in 2016 Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson. Now, Dr. Ben Carson will talk to us about the medical advancements of the 20th century warfare. So, Dr. Carson, how are you doing today?
Thanks for letting me join you, Jacob. As you can tell, I've woken from my 3rd nap and am very energized and ready to take part in this segment. I can't wait to spread my knowledge to all the young folk watching.
It's good to hear, Dr. Carson. Now, first and foremost, how are you dealing with the 2016 loss and Donald Trump now being president?
Thanks for asking, Jacob. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm still extremely heated over this loss. I mean, I really thought I was going to get the nomination, but clearly the country decided to go in another direction, and I'm still upset talking about it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Doctor, but let's cut right to the chase. You're here to talk to us about the medical advancements in warfare of the 20th century. Why don't you go right into that?
Well, Jacob, there is a variety of different things added to the medical field that helped advance medical treatment during the early wars, including World War I and World War II. I will only dabble in some of them, but let's get right into it. One of the biggest achievements in modern medicine was the creation of the mobile X-ray machine, bringing X-ray machines right to the front line. Truly thrilling stuff. Also, doctors were trained to work with scarce materials, to be field doctors per se, and work with the very little materials they had. Morphine was also now commonly used during modern warfare medicine. As for the impacts of these, at the time I would give them a 5 out of 5, because I really can't contain my excitement when talking about them. As for current day, warfare medicine is still extremely important to make sure the casualties are kept low so armies could have a surplus of soldiers. I'd still say it's a 5 out of 5.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carson. We really appreciate your expertise on the matter at hand. And that pretty much wraps up our episode on technological advancements and developments in the 20th century. As you can see, I made my way over from the pillow fort to sign off from the desk. Next week, we will be discussing how the Constitution is an illegal document. So make sure and stay tuned for that. Signing off, I'm Jake Jonesworth. Stay classy, America.